How come when I want to parallel park, I can't just turn the wheel real hard, turn the wheels to a 90-degree perpendicular, and just scoot?
Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 163 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Sam and I'm the vector artist.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is a gusty tree, 2018.
It was a good day.
Yes. Before we get started, there's a warning. Anything can happen on this show. It's going to be profanity, and then stuff's going to happen that children should not be privy to. So there's a child in the room, just hurl them right out the door.
Grab them by the backside, give them a swift boot.
Grab them by the scruff. Get him out of there. Let's get on to the news this week. First, we want to thank our supporters through our Ko-Fi account, which is over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. So thanks to I Am Cade and Bem182.
It's a hard one to phonetically say.
Yes, and we also have several recurring donators, which we appreciate a lot, and so we just want to thank everybody for helping keep the lights on this little show we got going on. Let's talk about Levelhead.
Let's do it.
Okay, so if you're paying attention to the date, you'll know that it's been 4 days since we recorded the last podcast, because Sam is about to head on a week-long sort of spirit quest. Like a vision.
I'll be
quest.
working. Yeah, I'll be up in Iowa. I'm going back to visit the family.
Yeah, he just won't be physically in the office. Yeah. So we're pre-recording this thing earlier than normal. So it's only been 4 days. So what has happened in the last 4 days?
Well, we've tried to explain to people, to business partners, that if they could just give us just a little more time, then everything will be completely different, basically, no matter what.
Right.
And
like a day. Maybe.
Yeah, we operate almost in like dog time over here. So, 1 day for a normal person is approximately 7 days in Butterscotch time.
Right.
And so basically what's happened in the past 4 days is
everything is different.
Everything
in Levelhead.
So
literally everything, the whole point of the game is different now.
And it feels so good. So essentially what happened was, we've been talking on the podcast about this grabbing mechanic, this tow cable, this sort of grappling hook thing.
Which originally started as just grabbing like you would do in Mario.
So you'd walk over to something originally and you'd just pick it up and that was it.
And then we were like, fuck this.
And then you got this little sort of extended grab cable. So you'd fire this thing out and you could grab stuff. And that was very, very fun. And then you could kick those things and throw them around. And we realized that from a little comment, a sort of side comment that Adam had made right before he left, after looking at some of the grappling stuff, the end of the levels had always been about getting to this warp pad on which was sitting this levitating package. So the idea, again, of the game is that you're training up these GR-18s, which are sort of like a juice box AI droid thing. And the goal of the training is to make them both, extremely agile in the case of delivering packages, but also to make them love packages. So we thought putting the package as the goal was sort of the way to do that. Now, after the grab mechanic came to be,
well, I will say that we were never quite satisfied with that.
No, the ending has always been meh.
Yeah, it felt like it was just kind of there as a throwaway, where the ending could have been literally anything. Could have been a flagpole, could have been a hoop, box of donuts. Ring. And we were trying to tie it into the story by putting a package there. By then saying, oh yeah, the Bureau of Shipping is training these robots to go after packages, but this is the Bureau of Shipping we're talking about. Why are they training robots to just like go after packages? Why aren't they training robots to, deliver packages?
Yeah. So Adam had made this sort of throwaway comment right before he left that just for some reason just seared into my brain and then had just been sitting there for like a week. And he essentially said, hey, we have this package and you can grab stuff now. What if you brought the package to the goal? And then he just sort of went on about his business and caused like a severe mental disruption for me for the next week or so. And so I've just been thinking about this in like random bursts and stuff like that. And over the weekend, thought about it more and came in on Monday and I was like, I don't know if this is dumb. And I know this will literally completely shift how the game feels, how it plays, everything about it. This is one of those design forks. And we come across these every so often. This happened actually, I think probably 3 or 4 times in Crashlands, where you can sense that the weight of a single decision, which is not very hard to implement, will be massive in terms of like how it shifts the boat.
Right. So you can work on a game for 6 months and it's just trucking along. And then one day in like 2 hours, you do a thing that then forever changes the next 6 months.
And so we generally refer to these as the Pete effect, because this is the first time we experienced this was in our game Quadrupus Rampage a couple of years ago, where we had sent it out to a few sort of early testers for the game, and the overall response was like, this is really good, but
who cares?
Who cares? Like,
what's the point?
I don't get the point. And so in 2 days, we added Pete, who is the boss, who becomes sort of this, legendary figure in the lore of the Butterscotch universe, as well as a thing that everybody loves to hate when they play Quadrupus Rampage, because he's always insulting you and that sort of thing. And it gave the game this through line of purpose that previously literally was not there. And so the interesting thing with Levelhead was previously, you were going to trying to get to the end of this level, but why?
Who cares?
I mean, who cares? And so essentially what we did on Monday, we sat down.
We had no Pete.
Yeah, we had no Pete. And we had this discussion, and we went back and forth a little bit, and we were like, oh no, this is one of those things. And I think we just have to try doing it to see if this is the thing. Because oftentimes when you hit one of these forks, deviation from what has been known before. So essentially the space we've been operating in before with this is sort of like your generic platformer, right? Your goal is just to get to the end.
Yeah, you go through the obstacles, defeat enemies, and get to the goal.
And none of it matters, though. Just getting to the goal is what matters. And so we decided to do it. And in the span of, I guess it was just that day, the whole game kind of like solidified. And essentially what it is now is that you are, of course, still playing the same game, same platforming and stuff, but your goal is to find the package first, and then you have to pick it up, and it goes on your back. Like the bombs or like the springs that some of you have seen in some of the animations we've been putting into the Discord. And then you have to carry it and make it all the way to the goal, and then jump into the goal. You sort of do this rad slam down, and then the package sort of bursts and gets shipped off.
Right. So that's the core of it, but it's not that simple because for starters, you can only carry one thing at a time. So we updated a bunch of the other mechanics that previously, for example, we had golden keys that you could find, and then if you found a golden door, then the door would open for you. This was all automatic. Once we got the package in there, we thought, okay, since you can only carry one thing at a time, we need more things for you to carry to force the player into the decision of having to put the package down, go take care of some other stuff, and then go back to the package, right? So everything becomes like an optimization, like a simple puzzle where you're like, what's the quickest way to get this package to the goal? Where should I put it? Where should I throw it? And so then we swapped out the keys for an object that you have to put onto your back and carry with you, and then you throw the key at the door, and then the door opens. We have bombs that you pick up and throw. Can't have the package when you're doing that, right? And then the package also serves as a projectile, so you can hit enemies with it, and it doesn't damage them, but it does knock them away. So a lot of enemies will charge at you or shoot projectiles at you, and you can intercept the projectiles with the package.
Because the idea from Crashlands is that these packages they're basically indestructible.
Yes.
They just happen to be completely immobile.
They're also totally helpless.
Yeah. So it's this sort of comical situation where it ends up becoming, we realized sort of after we implemented it, it felt really, really good because you'd find this package, and we also animated the package so that it looks
it's like the packages from Crashlands. It has a face on blinking.
And if you stay away from it for too long, it starts looking really worried.
Yeah, it's like it's shaking like a little dog.
Yeah,
looking around.
And so you get it, and it's not just like an escort quest, right? Which is the things everybody hates from video games, where you're put in charge of some really dumb NPC who just can't help but accidentally kill themselves all the time, no matter what. In this case, it ends up feeling much more like the companion cube from Portal.
You have to get it to the end, but also it's a tool that you use to navigate the level. Because you can even throw the package down onto a bunch of spikes
and stand on it
and create a safe platform that you can jump onto. And then there's these little tricks you can do, like if you jump up off the package and then shoot your grappling hook down right as you jump, then you can like jump off of it and pick it up at the same time. So there's like levels of skill mastery involved with using it well. And also you can use it to pick up coins. So you can throw the package through, piles of coins, and it'll pick them up for you. So now all of a sudden you got this little buddy, which is also one of the core tenets of our games. You'll notice
you always have a buddy.
We always give the player a friend, except for in like the spaceship games, Flop Rocket and Roid Rage. So you got this little buddy, this little companion package. You're carrying it with you to the end of the level. And it has also solidified the thematic core, which was like, now you actually are training these robots to deliver packages. And so, and then we also make so that the goal is inactive unless you're carrying the package. Right. So you need to get it there. And it also thematically solidified the auto run mode that we had talked about.
So previously, the auto run mode was essentially just a twist on the game that was a bit more accessible. So it doesn't have all the usual trappings of all of the buttons available.
Just a one touch.
Yeah, it was just you were just going to be running, and then you just hit a button to jump. And yeah, once we realized like, oh, now you're actually delivering things, we switched it from auto run mode to rush delivery. So standard shipping is your normal mode.
So the regular, now it's not just like a 2D platformer. Now it's a package delivery game. And so the normal game mode is standard delivery. That's what you're training GR18 to do a standard delivery. Yeah. And then for the other training mode, it's rush order mode.
Yeah. And so, Seth, we started chatting about that, and this was like yesterday morning.
Yeah.
So we started chatting about that because, again, realizing that, this whole thing is kind of really nicely crystallized in a really weird way these last couple of days. And with the rush delivery mode, there was one thing that was sort of weird about it, which is that you were still playing completely as GR18 in form, right? So it's just still a little robot.
Still just running around the level.
Still got the package on your back. And it's just kind of weird that we would just strip your controls from you in that particular context. And so, we did some thinking about it and realized that there's some other games that do this, but anytime they do it, if you think about Donkey Kong, for example, they have these minecart levels.
Right. You can't do your normal stuff other than jump in the minecart.
And the important thing there is that they have a visual reinforcement of the change in gameplay, right? So in our case, we were just leaving GR18 the same, as opposed to providing some other mechanism by which you're doing these things. And so this morning, I banged out in the last 2 hours a transformation for GR18 that turns it into a moped.
Yes, a little robot moped with a face and a package strapped onto its back.
And then Seth had programmed up the game such that it plays kind of like, what was it called, swoop bike racing?
Yeah, in Knights of the Old Republic, they have this little mini game, swoop bike racing, and I love the shit out of it because of how simple it is, which is your bike, you just hold the acceleration button. That's your whole thing. And then there'll be barricades and obstacles on the course. If you hit them, they cut your speed down. Your bike doesn't get destroyed or anything. They just cut your speed down. And then there are boosts on the ground that are played. They're all over the place. And so then the game becomes trying to hit as many boosts as you can to get the fastest time. Right. Because your speed doesn't have to do with, like, you ever play more like realistic racing games where you just fly off the track and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, you're on grass, so now you don't have as much traction, and now you're hitting walls, and most of the time your bad score comes down to also having a bad experience because you're like going backwards and banging into shit, and it's terrible.
Or just like, generally running off the track, even in Super Mario, like running off the track and hitting the grass, you're like, ugh.
And then you got to slowly creep back onto the track, and there's nothing good about it, right? And so I thought, what if we took that kind of a swoop bike racing concept where instead of in auto run mode, you just like die all the time. What if we mostly made it about avoiding going slower and seeking out going faster? So we just made these little boost and brake items that if you pass through them, you get a temporary speed boost. And so then the objective becomes just hit as many boosts as you can and don't hit the brake items. And you could put spikes in there and stuff like that. But you actually, as you're designing these levels, you'll notice you don't feel the need to.
It's just
because that's not the point. The point is to try to make the jumps, and just go fast as you can. And so I played around with that, and it was so easy. I even randomly placed a bunch of stuff, and it still turned out to be a pretty decent race level. Right?
Yeah, and this is an interesting point because one of the things we've been talking a lot about internally is the fact that we know that most people are not going to make good levels because
it's hard.
Yeah, good level design is actually very hard to do, and so one of the general concerns we've had with a game like this is just that if the mechanical core of it is not 100% fun just to sort of tool around in by itself and is not interesting no matter what is thrown at it, then you run into the circumstance where you as a creator might make a level, but it's going to be really hard to make it good because it depends so heavily on the design. Right.
If the fun purely comes from the level, then most of the time the game isn't going to be fun. Right.
And so
the mechanics that you're building the game around have to be fun, just sort of despite the circumstances.
Right. And so what we found now with that combination of the package carrying, the tow cable, and then now with this auto run mode, is we think we've hit a point where actually the mechanics are so strong that
it's going to be hard to fuck it up.
Yeah, like even if you make a really terrible level, because of the fact, and we refer to this oftentimes as player style. So if you're playing a game where there's only sort of one way to do something, then I mean, it's kind of everyone has the exact same experience. So Crashlands is actually kind of an example of this, where there's only one way to. I mean, you can get bombs, you can sort of kind of kit out yourself as a different class a little bit, but for the most part, everyone has a very similar experience in that game. Versus in Levelhead, the goal has shifted to making it such that if you and I play the same level, I could do some really wacky stuff because of sort of the physics that's happening in it and the tow cable and some of those all the weird elements come into play such that I can put my own personality into the way that I'm playing moment to moment.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of just strategically.
You get to make the real decision. And it's even comes down to stuff like, let's say you get to the end of the level where one player might just jump right into the goal. Another player might try to throw the package ahead of themselves, jump onto it, and then use it to boost their height and try to perform like a maneuver at the end to get an extra couple 100 points because they hit the goal higher, right? And so now there's just, or like you see an enemy. Do you want to ignore it? Do you want to jump on it? Or do you want to hit it in the face with your package and try to knock it off of a cliff?
Yeah.
And then as you're building the levels, I even had I made a level where there's this big, pretty hard to deal with enemy. It's called a canoodle. Mm-hmm. It shoots projectiles out of its back. And you could just go and fight it and move on. But then I hid a bomb sort of like further back in the level and then I also put some breakable blocks that are bombable as well near the canoodle. So if you bring that bomb, you could throw the bomb at the canoodle, deal some extra damage. Mm-hmm. Or you can use the bomb to blow up these other blocks and get 3 more bombs, and then you can use those to fight it.
Kill it from far away, yeah.
Yeah. And so because of this sort of grabbing and throwing and carrying mechanic, players can kind of bring things from one area of the level to the other and try to find, optimal paths of doing things. So it's just changed everything.
It has. And I think, I've gotten so much more excited. I was already very excited, but it's just really fun now. I don't know what the hell happened. It's very strange. And I think whenever you're designing a game, or frankly, if you're writing something or whatever else, you're always, at least for me, having done it enough now, I'm always just sort of waiting and hoping for something like this to happen.
You just got to hang in there long enough.
Yeah, where you suddenly see this opportunity and then you can go do something with it. So I'm so excited, and we have some announcements and stuff, and some other sort of cool things we'll be showing sort of toward the end of this month about Levelhead. But until then, we're not going to be showing anything else about it aside from some screenshot Saturdays.
Yeah, basically, our sort of legit marketing and hype building will start next month, right? So September. So we'll have some news.
Man, I'm so excited.
Yeah. All right, so let's get on to some industry news before we hit questions. Let's talk about Apple. Apple has changed their affiliate program. There was an article on Touch Arcade about basically losing a substantial proportion of their revenue.
Right. Well, so it's
because of this change.
Yeah. So essentially, what this was when the App Store started, in order to help sort of drive sales and traffic, they created this affiliate program. And essentially what that means is that you as an affiliate would get a special link. And if people followed through that link to buy a game, then you would get a little bit of a kickback. So, and that would come out of Apple's cut. So Apple again takes 30%. And so presumably, I don't actually know what the numbers are, but some sliver of that then would go to the affiliate as opposed to just going to Apple. And so it's interesting because they apparently just made this announcement out of the blue. So there was not like a...
Well, last year they reduced the affiliate proportion. Mm-hmm. So it had just been untouched basically since the App Store was created. And this has allowed things like Touch Arcade to exist. Right. These mobile review sites that they aggregate a huge community, and they're all about talking about games, reviewing games, talking about quality, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so then, by forwarding people through those links, they can build up staff and actually provide good quality content.
Right. And so essentially what's happened now is they kind of just announced that they're not doing it anymore. So I think it's already effective, right? Yeah,
they just said it's done now.
Yeah. So there was not really much forewarning. And then now this is a very serious question about essentially with the ability of something like the mobile press generally to actually provide coverage for games, because from the tone of the Touch Arcade article, it really seems like this is a big enough hit on their overall revenue, and it's a really small operation, anyways. Like they're not rolling in the dough in terms of like being a Engadget or some huge monstrous magazine thing.
Right.
So apparently it's a very large hit to their overall way of generating revenue. And so it honestly is this really weird question where there's already not that many mobile review sites generally that have been successful enough. There's been like 3 or 4.
There's a large number of sort of very low involvement sites, right? So there's tons of people who maybe start
like blogs or something.
people start a review site and like, oh, this is my mobile game review site, and they'll post once every 2 months or something like that. And there's just thousands of those, right? But something on the sort of quality level of Touch Arcade, that's a very hard thing to find.
Right. So we don't know what's gonna happen there. I don't know what it means, but it is interesting. I think the tone Apple was taking with it was essentially saying, with all the changes they made to the storefront, they're looking to essentially be the editors for this stuff. So to essentially, in a lot of ways, theoretically make mobile press redundant. Now, I don't know if that's actually possible because of how many games are coming out. Like they're, I mean, that's a huge job to try to take on. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it's a very interesting sort of evolution in all this mobile review stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I think the landscape of the mobile games press would be very difficult to navigate without something like Touch Arcade. Pocket Gamer, they're also one of the major ones. I assume that they also get a good chunk of their revenue from this kind of stuff. And it's also the question of, as developers, who do we talk to?
Yeah, if you could only talk to Apple.
If the major sites close down because they can't sustain themselves, who are we supposed to go talk to for press about mobile games?
Yeah, because
sites like Kotaku and IGN or whatever, like they're not talking about upcoming mobile games.
It's also the case that the Apple staff generally, I mean, it's just not going to be able to handle the total number of requests coming in, right? That's always been the case, even before when there was a lot of press. And so it is that really weird question, which is, what does it mean for...
There will be a void.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to fill it or how.
Well, importantly, what does it mean for if you're starting out and you're looking for those first couple of rungs up the press ladder, right? If there's none, and then it's just you have to somehow get Apple to pay attention, but there's no way to say, hey Apple, Touch Arcade already reviewed or give us a preview and they loved it, or so and so.
You can't get that stamp of approval.
It's
from
hard
the rest
to roll
of the
that forward.
Community. Yeah.
So I'm really I don't know what it means. We'll kind of just wait it out and see what the fallout is from all this, but it's going to be curious.
It's going to be weird. So I don't know. All right, let's go on some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. So if you'd like to get your question on a future episode, get over there, put your question in the text box, and then submit it to us. First question comes from IrishLuck. As game developers, you guys have mentioned changing the games you're making a lot. And I guess it's part of the process. How often do you remove a large portion of a game when you realize it doesn't work?
We've done that a lot.
Sometimes we remove an entire game.
Yeah, which is that's kind of like what happened over the last 2 years for the most part. But the interesting thing about it is they always come back a little bit in various forms inside of the new game. So that's an interesting process in and of itself. But as far as just sort of the constant morphing of things, we experienced this with Crashlands too. But that took like a year and a half, I think, before it actually crystallized.
Yeah, I mean, Crashlands is built upon the foundation of just the corpses of dead game systems that we just killed.
Yeah, and Seth and I watched we had put together like an alpha gameplay trailer for Crashlands. I think it was like a year.
It was at GDC. We went in I think March or so. So we're about 4 months into development, and we went to a GDC and we sat down with, I think, Carter Dotson, who was recently at Touch Arcade, and talked about the game. Well,
there was even one a year later than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is, I think it's like a year before the game actually came out, or 7 and 8 months before the game came out. And it was so funny because most of the systems were not the ones that actually went in that launched.
Yeah,
at all.
Everything changes.
And so there's this one funny scene where if you've played Crashlands, there's pet taming involved. And the way you tame pets is actually you just get an egg and you hatch it. Now, it previously was that you would actually beat the crap out of a creature, right?
And then beat it into submission.
And then it would sort of like face plant and then be kind of shaking. So all of the creatures actually have this frame, which is this sort of like defeated, just sort of horrified.
Please show me mercy. Shaking.
And originally you actually had to choose to execute. So you had to tap them one more time, and then Flux would do like this backflip, and then just crush them into like a splatter on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Horrifying. And Adam, luckily, came on and he was like, what are you guys doing?
This is bad.
This is real horrifying. But it actually is, it's in that trailer because you see there's a Bamley on the ground. Flux runs over and throws something at it. And then you play this mini game to see if you can tame it.
Yes.
And
so you didn't hatch a creature, you tamed one.
Yeah.
And then we kind of realized, for starters, the execution way too rough.
Maybe
that's going to move us like from a teen into like an M, and then the egg hatching thing actually builds up your attachment to that creature a lot more, right?
You have to invest in it.
Yeah, I mean, you lovingly craft a nest, and you put the egg in there and you wait for it to hatch. It only takes 5 minutes or whatever. And then when it hatches, of course, it's tiny and it takes a while for it to reach full size. And even though it's invincible and it can't take any damage, you still feel like a caretaker for it, which isn't necessarily the case if you acquire the creature by just beating the crap out of it.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah. So yeah, we had that. That's my favorite example of a system that we just ripped out. We had all kinds of stuff. We actually had in Crash Ends chests and bags, and we actually had inventory management early, and we ripped all that out and swapped it out for the infinite inventory. And
I think, even just this previous conversation about Levelhead's an interesting example because you'll have some of these shifts in design that then necessitate going back and not necessarily ripping things out, but just sort of moving them. So we have there's armor and some other things that you can get in Levelhead. You can pick them up and they'll say absorb a hit for you. And it previously was the case you would just run into it like with your face, and
now
then it would sort of be like it'd be like bling, and then now you could take a hit. But with the carry mechanism, now you have to choose to pick up the thing that gives you this extra hit, and then you carry it on your back. So again, it's going to displace the package or whatever else you got back there. And so it's less that it's less that we always rip things out and more that they just they're constantly morphing in like a big sort of weird design pool until everything kind of settles. Yeah. And this I think comes down at the core is coming down to recognizing we don't know what the fuck we are doing. Yeah. Like not at all. I was on a sort of a business call yesterday, and somebody had asked me, do you guys have design documents? Like, you guys have anything? And I just laughed. I was like, fuck no. I have no idea where anything is going with this, right? Yeah. So, and I think if you get too rigid about the vision of the thing that you're trying to build, I think you miss all these fun opportunities of just kind of exploring and saying, I don't know why this is the way it is. It just seemed like a good idea at the time, but it's probably wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Everything can be better. Even this idea of turning GR18 into a moped. Yes. That wasn't part of the plan. No, not at all. And I think there's actually this interesting article I read just recently about the art of approaching who's writing in this case. But apparently this is a thing. So they refer to it as macro planners or micro planners. So either you're the sort of person who approaches your creative work with, like, you know all the details. You plan it out. It's just, you just know it's going to go, and until you just work on it until it's done, and then it's done. Or you're the sort of person, which is actually the way we operate, where you, in the case of writing, you basically don't know what the next sentence is going to be until you write it, right? Yes. You have no idea where the story's going. You don't know what the ending will be. You're just going to go and let it sort of suss itself out. Let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it was interesting reading about that in the writing profession because, of course, your talk at GDC was all about this, about basically our chaos design theory. Yeah. And about how we don't plan anything. And aside from just saying, like, we're going to work on this today for 8 to 10 hours. Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing about this, too, is it's virtually impossible for somebody who adheres to one of these specific approaches to understand why anybody or how anybody could conceivably use the other approach. Right. Yeah. So if you're somebody who plans everything, and then you got somebody else who comes in and is like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. And they're just sitting there like slapping their keyboard all day. And you're sitting there thinking, how the hell could they ever make something with this process? Let alone something good. Right. Like, you could never even finish something, let alone make a good thing, by not ever knowing what is happening. Right. But it turns out that that's our preferred method of doing things, is not having any clue.
And on the flip side, we look at these people with design documents and we're thinking, how could they possibly claim to know what's going to happen?
I still don't get it, honestly.
I never will understand it. But everybody has their own style, and people do whatever works for them, And I think, upon reflecting about, because I saw this come down in the feedback that I got at my GDC talk, which is like some people were like, shit, yeah, that's exactly how we make our games. I'm glad somebody's talking about this approach. And then some other people were almost livid about even the possibility of suggesting that you should make games this way.
Well, they claimed it was that suggesting this method was dangerous.
That this is a dangerous idea, that if people try to follow it, it's going to cause irreparable harm to their game development career.
You're a menace to society, Seth. You're preaching this chaos gospel over here.
Yeah. And so, I always try to preface these conversations with, no, seriously, do whatever works for you. And we don't know what the fuck we're doing anyways. So it's fine. But all right, our next question comes from AmbersArcade. What are you doing in Levelhead and Scuffle Buddies to help people with disabilities play easier? In game dev circles, can you tell if accessibility awareness / implementation is becoming more important before games are shipped, not in post-release patches?
Yeah, I do think, it's something we've been more conscious of basically since Crashlands actually came out. I think a big part of it was our audience previously was usually not big enough that we would have enough of a population just in the games generally.
Right. We just needed people.
Yeah. That was sort of the first step.
Yeah. Just
and going into the launch of Crashlands, it does require extra dev time, of course, to do a variety of these accessibility options. So going into the launch of Crashlands, we've talked about it before, but we were on the we were running out of everything before that happened.
Yeah.
So one of the first major patch was the quality of life patch, which included colorblind mode and some other sort of just accessibility options generally. And that was a really exciting thing to be able to do because, when you look at the numbers for it, especially something as simple as colorblind mode, which is like if you're going to do any accessibility, if you're going to choose one,
try that one,
do that one because it hits actually a huge number of people in the population. But that was an interesting thing because I think now it is just sort of rolled into our development cycle.
Yeah. And it comes down to simple things like don't just use color to distinguish things. If you can, try to convey also different silhouettes or shapes, right?
Or choose different colors than red and green for your oppositional ones.
Right. Even if that's the most common colorblind thing.
Even if you just use red and blue instead, you're going to have a better time in terms of
that'll narrow that. Yeah. And of course there's tons of different kinds of color blindness, and so no matter if you're only using color, no matter what combination you choose, it's going to hit somebody wrong, right? And so trying to come up with ways to do that. So in multiplayer, for example, in Levelhead, we originally just had colored arrows over the players' heads, so blue, yellow, green, red, whatever. And we thought, well, we could do better, right? Yep. So now there are colored shapes. So now it's like a star and a diamond and that kind of stuff. So that even if you have color blindness, you can still easily distinguish between.
So a big part of it is just sort of, we've been learning. It's also just not, being who we are. We don't necessarily know what these various things are that we should be looking out for. Because if we're not dealing with them personally, then it's very easy to just not have these things on our radar. That's sort of that's like the definition of how privilege operates in a general scope, right? It's
you don't have to think about the problems that you don't have.
Exactly. So you're just not even aware. So honestly, it's been really good because we do occasionally get notes from people where they're like, oh, here's the situation I'm dealing with, whatever else, and your game doesn't necessarily support it. But usually in the past, it had almost always been, oh, we had never even thought about that. And now we're trying to take a much more proactive approach. Yeah. And so I think you're probably going to be seeing definitely more awareness around it because it seems like it's just talked about more.
Yeah.
Generally, the last couple of years in particular, accessibility is a thing to have on launch as opposed to later.
Yeah. And in a larger company, I think this is an easier thing to think about because with more people on your team, you're more likely to have people on the team who had these issues or to have people on the team who have friends or family who have these issues and it's at the forefront of their mind. Of course, the smaller your team is, the more narrow of a world experience you have to draw from. So when it comes to Levelhead, we have a bunch of stuff. So we've got things like we have the different game modes that are, for example, like one-touch game mode so that you can play with a single finger or an elbow or a nose or whatever touch-sensitive object you've got on your body. You're good. So we have that, and then we have fully remappable keys of all kinds. And then we'll also be doing stuff where, for example, on mobile, we do use a pinch zoom and like 2 fingers to pan and scroll around. But everything else is one touch. And so we're even going to go so far as to add a little sort of optional camera joystick that you can spawn for accessibility, so that if you've only got one finger, then you can
still do the thing.
Then you can still do it. You just use the joystick and you can navigate. So anybody should be able to participate in the game, at least on some level. And also having filterable difficulty levels. So it's like one of the things that we got feedback from in Crashlands was, even just by adding difficulty options, then people who have a harder time engaging with high skill games can just switch it over to the easier game mode, and they can still fully engage with it, right? Because then it's still a challenge for them and it's still great. And so with Levelhead, when you're looking at other players' levels, you'll be able to choose from a drop down some options to filter by, so that you can find the levels that apply to your skill set. So yeah, I think it's super important. I think you're right. I think we're seeing the industry kind of trending more toward.
Yeah, well, I think people are more aware of it. And I think that the truth about it is too that it's one thing to know that it's a problem that exists, and it's another one to know how the hell to solve it in your game. And I think that's actually one of the big things that's been happening recently. Is people are swapping notes where they're like, "Oh, here's how you easily do something like colorblind mode, or here's how you more easily do something like switch your game," because you can't not recognize the fact that implementing these features oftentimes does take a considerable amount of dev time. And if you're looking at an indie studio who's running out of money, who doesn't necessarily have like a lot of publisher backing, whatever else,
they're having a hard time just getting the game done and out.
And so, as you know, there's certain sort of groups of people basically or groups of maybe studios where it's, as much as you would want accessibility to be at the forefront of their mind, it's almost impossible because survivability is sort of the first one for them.
Right.
And so that's why I've really liked this sort of exchange of information that's been going on, because it's made it more likely, and I think just way more easy to approach it, because you don't necessarily have to approach from a design from scratch situation about, how do you convert like maybe a platformer into a one button control mechanism? How do you think about pinch zoom, and how would you possibly make a solution for this?
Yeah, because not everybody can pinch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if people are swapping notes about it, though, then you don't have to do the design work on top of the implementation work, which is really big. So.
Yeah, and it really just comes down to options. Yeah. The more control options you put in there. And this also comes down to putting the game onto multiple different platforms, right? So putting it on a desktop, it's got keyboard hotkeys, and then people can map those to different devices and stuff like that that they might be using for accessibility and that kind of thing. So really just like including as many customization options as you can is just a great way to try to sort of head this off at the pass. Our next question comes from The Rumpus. What's up? A few times in the past, you mentioned the Butterscotch citadel of code that you guys keep of useful scripts and such from jams and projects. What's your preferred way to archive stuff and easily access it for later? How is the citadel sausage built?
Well, so I guess what is the citadel? What does that mean?
All right, so every time we do a game jam or work on a big game project or whatever, we're always solving similar problems on some level. So maybe one game we'll do a thing that has inventory management. And then 3 games later, we have to keep track of currency, or we have to keep track of, whatever. And we realize, gosh, if I had that system that I built from 3 games ago, it would be real fucking nice right now.
Real fast.
It'd be speed things up a lot. And so if you ever find yourself re-solving the same problems, which you will if you do a lot of game jams, then it's time to generalize that. So you write up a script or write up something that'll just kind of solve that problem, at least on a baseline level, pretty quickly and easily for you. And then you just add that to the pile. So we have this big ass thing, we call it the Butterscotch pack. It's got, I think now, nearly 500 scripts in it. A bunch of objects. It's got cameras. It's got particle systems. It can handle like bullet time and slow motion, pause screens, inventory systems, isometric grids, just all kinds of stuff. And in most games, we only use maybe 10% of those things, but they're all just there, ready to go. And
so it's kind of like in a programmer context, then you can kind of think of like an experienced programmer just sort of carrying this huge sack of tools around. And it just gets, as the years go on, they just get more tools in this bag, right?
Yeah.
So a new project comes along and they're like, oh, it's one of those. I'm going to grab this weird inventory management system I made 4 games back, apply it to this problem. So This is actually a huge benefit that as a programmer you get over some of the other crafts that are involved, like art, for example. You can't necessarily. There's not really. I don't get to bring tools from previous games with me so much as you just have the experience mentally in your head, right?
Of what to do, what not to do, how to not go down blind alleys and stuff. Yeah, and so I do think though that the only way to do this is to do a lot of projects.
Yes,
because by exposing yourself to these problems over and over again, you start to see the patterns. You start to see what you need to put into your toolbox and what you don't. What is going to be more general or more specific to a certain problem and what's more of just like a universal thing that you're always solving over and over again. So if you're the kind of person who tends to only work on one thing, for a year or two, maybe think about switching up your tack,
Yeah. Well, I think it's exactly that point, which is that the more of this breadth you have in terms of the diversity of stuff you come across, the less narrow your view is in any regard. So you might notice parallels between systems you built before that are kind of unrelated and maybe a new problem you have. So even if it doesn't match 100%, the fact that you've tackled, isometric grid stuff might somehow relate to some weird Cartesian grid that you're using for some new system or who knows? Yeah.
I mean, even stuff like, we made Goop Legacy at the Shenanites. And I've been working on this game on the Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/bscotch on Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. to noon CDT.
Plug.
And the movement in that game comes from Goop Legacy. Like the spaceship movement is code that was used to move goops around in Goop Legacy. It's animated differently, but under the hood, the movement system is exactly the same. So, just the more of these projects you do, the more you see the patterns and the faster you can solve all problems. And then as far as sort of migrating it between projects, Adam built this dope ass tool called the Gmod bot, which allows us to create what we call modules in GameMaker and inject them.
Yeah.
So it basically sucks up the code from one GameMaker project, but in a very constrained kind of a way, and then it injects it into another GameMaker project. And it does it in such a way that it maintains relationships between objects, and you can even have things in the new project that are child objects of things in your module, and when the injection occurs, it rebuilds those relationships, and so it allows us to very easily just migrate code from one project to another. So
very cool.
It's good to have a tools developer around to make digital syringes for you. All right, next question comes from Angry Muffin. In episode 24, Sam's chest meat.
That was a good time.
That was a while back. You talked about the value or lack thereof of things like Amazon Underground and using Humble Bundle within a year of a game launch. You said that these things help boost the tail end and used the example of 1 to 2 years after Crashlands launch, maybe going to $5 on Steam and $1 on mobile. But you raised the price on mobile, as lowering it had a negative effect on sales. Has this experimentation changed your view on lowering game prices well into the tail?
So, yes, 100%. So just to back everybody up on what's sort of happened here, we had the big question, which was after the successful launch of a game, or even just the launch of a game, doesn't have to be successful, you were likely to be approached by these bundles. What a bundle does is they take a bunch of keys for your game.
They take everything.
Yeah, they take a bunch of keys for your game, and then they sell them at a very, very low price. And the idea is that you'll get some money from it, which is cool, but you'll be bundled in with a bunch of other games simultaneously. So it might be $5 someone would pay, and they might get 5 games for it. One of those is yours, and then you get a kickback from that.
Right. So the bundle will take most of the money.
That's how it works, yeah. So, it's 30.
It depends on the bundle.
It's actually usually a 70-30 split, but the 70 gets split across all the devs.
Right.
So there might be 5 devs in there, so now you're looking at a smaller proportion. And so we did do it with Humble Bundle, I think a year and a half after launch. It went very well. It was very fun. And we've done some stuff with GameMaker bundles before through Humble as well. We haven't done any other ones.
We've always done it through Humble.
Yeah. And a big part of it is that when we've looked at the numbers of those, it seems weird, because the reality is what we end up getting is actually not a lot of active players from those things.
Right, because people are buying your game on accident.
Yeah, usually.
They're like, oh, here's 30 games, and then they just have your game. They don't even realize they have it. They may not ever activate the key, or they may activate it and then never play it.
Or sell the key.
They might sell the key. That
which is a whole other thing. And so this is actually the secondary market for keys has sort of oftentimes thrived off of the backs of the bundles. So what can happen then is, so say we put Crashlands in a bundle, say it sells like 10,000 bundles, which means there's now 10,000 keys of Crashlands floating around, and probably like 80% of those people are not going to actually cash in on Crash. Like they're not going to play it.
Yeah.
This is what we found, is that it seems like there's something like a 1 in 5 chance that someone who buys through a bundle will end up showing up.
And that, of course, depends on the scale of the bundle. Because I think I bought a bundle that I think had like 80 games in it.
Yeah. How are you? Point. That's a lifetime. You know?
Yeah. I activated most of the keys, but then now I'm filled with regret because my Steam library is now just, it's like 300 games deep, and I don't know what the fuck is in it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Now I can't find any of the games I do want to play.
Right. So but the problem then becomes that you have keys show up on these key reselling sites. And if, say, the person got your game in a bundle, they might be selling the key for like $1 or $2, whereas your game, like Crashlands, is up for $15 on Steam.
Right. Because their actual price for your game was then like 15 cents or something.
And so, so using or not using these things is kind of a hard strategic decision. In our case, we just said, we're not going to think about this too much. We'll just go with Humble because we know they're good. We'll move on. Now, when it comes to sort of our understanding of the pricing of things, I think my general take it has changed a lot. And I think my general take now is that I think a lot of indies get their pricing wrong. People can't tell how good your game is. We talked about this last podcast. It's an experienced good. They cannot tell how good it is until they get it. And so the price is also a signal to people of the quality of it, right? And so this is what we experienced when we moved the price on Crashlands, not even in a sale. We just moved it down from $15 to $10 on Steam, thinking that would increase the total number of players we would have. Which is kind of
and instead, people were like, "Well, this must be a piece of shit."
Yeah, so we were selling the game for $5 less, and demand went down. Right?
Yeah, so we got hit double, right? Because our number of sales went down, and we were making 30% less money per sale.
Yeah, so it was horrible.
That sucked a lot.
Yeah. And
we have to undo this.
Yeah.
Fortunately, nobody really cared.
No.
Because everybody who had already bought it, they already had it. And the people who were going to buy it weren't paying that much attention. Yeah. So,
it worked
dodged
out.
That.
It worked out. But I think it's one of those things where, your understanding of how economics works is a lie, essentially, based on economics.
Well, yeah. The fundamental concept of economics is, you got – well, here's the core underpinning of economics theory is that in a world of perfect information, right? Assuming that you know everything there is to know about a product, then
including its previous price history, probably
everything, everything about a product. Then the one decision factor is whether you believe the price is reasonable for what you're getting.
Right.
But what economic theory doesn't talk about is that fucking nobody has almost any information about anything. And so oftentimes the price is the information,
right?
Which means the higher the price, the more likely you are to buy it because the more desirable it seems.
Right. So
which is backwards.
It's totally backwards. Yeah. And so then we, from that, we were like, what happens if we just raise the price on mobile? And I think we just did, it was like a Thursday. And I can't remember, someone just floated the idea and we're like, let's just see what happens.
Let's just do it.
Because who cares? And we'll just see, like people who've already bought it, they don't care. They got it. It's fine. So we raised the price to $7. And this is also after I think our third update. So the truth is Crashlands has gotten better. We've continued working on it for 2 years. So we're like, this is fine. We could rationalize this some way.
But we didn't have to.
We didn't have to.
It was fine.
And the funny thing about it was our total number of units sold went down a little bit, but our revenue was flat.
Yep.
So
and when we put the game on sale now, we can do it steeper.
Yeah, which is fun. So really weird. And I think the whole thing we understood from that is we're trying to get enough understanding of how the market works before we launch our next game that we don't do something as dumb as we have done in the past.
The price of a game is arbitrary.
Everything's arbitrary.
Because if you think about like when you go to the movies, you pay $10+. You get your ticket. Maybe you spend $8 on a kernel of popcorn. We went to the movie theater to watch. What did we watch?
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Ant-Man. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to get a beverage. I go to get a small
$6 or something.
I got a small just fountain soda. Yeah. And it was like, I think it was $7. I was like, what the hell is it? But again, it was fine, I guess. I was willing to, at that moment, to pay $7 for it. So what does that tell you about the value and the price of?
It's always context. It's situational, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so whenever people ask, like, how come Crashlands is cheaper on mobile? It's like, well, Why is it any price? We don't fucking know. This is just what people will pay for.
Yeah. Why isn't it more expensive everywhere? You know?
Yeah. Hey, here's how much we want to charge. Are you willing to pay? Yes. All right. Well, then let's do this.
That's true. I think there's a bit of some weird stuff going on there in terms of like the comparison across platforms or even some of this other stuff as far as people getting fired up. The assumption that people are behave in a very particular way is just completely wrong most of the time. I mean, this economics idea of like, oh yeah, in a perfect world where everyone knows everything equally.
Which doesn't exist.
But if that were the case, this is what would happen. It's the same case with this, which is like, I think people are messy, you know?
People are messy.
And I mean, even it comes to me where like if I go try to park, so parking is like one of the things that I hate the most, just generally, like having to drive around and find a parking spot, and then parallel parking in particular, just not a fan. Not a fan of doing it. So if I have to go and park somewhere, like if I see a spot and I'm turning around to go get to it because it's on the other side of the street and someone else parks there, right?
Oh, that's the worst.
You're like, I saw it. That was my spot. So I think there's all these sort of stupid wrinkles that we do just to agitate ourselves on the daily.
That's true. And one thing that really pisses me off is that my wheels don't turn sideways. Like why?
Why not?
How come when I want to parallel park, I can't just turn the wheel real hard, turn my fucking wheels to a 90-degree perpendicular and just scoot, right? Because, I mean, I get it. It's a safety problem. Maybe I'm going 70 miles an hour down the interstate, and then all of a sudden I turn my wheels sideways. That's a bad move.
But being able to have a mode.
Right. But like I do have an emergency brake, which I also should not use on the interstate. You know, I've got lots of dangerous tools in my car.
That's true.
That used in the wrong context, or even if I just
the car itself is a dangerous tool.
Right. Even if I just cranked my steering wheel really hard to one side while going down the interstate, even without perpendicular tires, even that would be a bad move and would probably kill everyone, just everyone on the earth,
just the whole planet.
So why can't why haven't we? People are talking about flying cars. I don't give a shit. I just want sideways cars. I want to be able to just scoot. I want to pull up next to the spot and then just slide right in.
Well, there's all that like automated parking. I think there's a bunch of AIs.
Yeah, we're developing entire fucking robots and neural networks so that they can parallel park. Why don't we just
turn the wheel?
Take a step back. Just take a deep breath. Turn the wheels sideways.
I'm here for this sideways car thing. I'm behind you 100%.
You know what? You know what would be even better? If we can't solve this sideways wheels problem, make a car that is that can flip. Right, so like it's got wheels,
backflips.
I'm talking
like that RC car that has really big tires, and so it doesn't matter.
Right, so either you've got big tires, or you've got an extra 4 tires, on the top of your car, and the top of your car is also a bottom, so that you want to parallel park. So a little arm comes out of the side of your car.
Oh,
it just rolls. It just kind of flips the car over, and now you're upside down. But that's fine because when you
parked, and that's the important
you parked,
thing.
And then like once you want to get back out of the space, you get in the car upside down, and then it flips back over again, and then you drive away.
Yeah, so all you need, then you just need a gyroscopic piloting thing that sits in the middle,
a ball, a pod,
like 4 extra wheels, and this sweet like grasshopper leg thing that flips. Why can't we have this?
How come as a society we can't come together and make flipping or perpendicular?
This should be the moon landing situation.
Where they're like, by the end of this decade, we will make a car that can roll into us.
Or that could just parallel park sideways.
Yes.
Bring it back. Let's do it.
Yeah, and we could also take things a step further. And because like the other thing about parallel parking is, like you said, people take your spot.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what if
you could fire a beacon that
you had a dart, you had a spot dart that you could just shoot it. No, I'm saying what if when you pulled into a spot, like what if there was just like one spot, okay? You'd pull into it, and then when you get out of your car, your car just goes down. It goes down into the hole, right? And then it gets sort of arranged somewhere.
I think they have some of these.
They've got like the towers where like you pull in, you get out, and then it's like a robot just takes your car, just puts it under a shelf.
Yeah.
This is where our research dollars need to be going. I'm sick of people talking
clean up these streets.
We don't need to go to space. We don't need to go anywhere.
We need to go to the parking garage.
We can't even go to a damn parking spot yet. So we need to get our own house in order, right? All right, we got time for one more question. Kulabula asks, hosting the first ever global Levelhead level jam on launch weekend?
I mean, it sounds like a good idea. Probably.
Well, the thing is, launch weekend will just sort of by default.
That's what will happen.
Actually, our servers will probably just be down. Let's
be real.
We have no idea what's going to happen or how to deal with it.
Yeah, we're going to have to do, it's going to be some interesting stress testing we're going to have to do sometime. Because we need to talk to some of our business partners to see who will let us do like a insane free weekend thing where we can
before launch.
Yeah, before launch for beta or something like that, where we can just be like, what happens if we just
beta stress test?
What happens if we just crush the server? Can it live?
Yeah.
Is it a cockroach server or is it more like a human child?
And the shitty thing is, like, even that we probably won't get the numbers of a real launch because, of course, an open beta weekend, it's cool because it's free, but also a lot of people are like, nah, I'm not going to do a beta because it's going to crash.
And it'll probably just be on one platform to make it easier.
It'll probably be just on one platform, so whoever, that cuts people out. Mm-hmm. And also, when you launch it, you've got the trailer, you've got the hype, you've got the press involved, you got YouTubers and streamers and whatever. With the beta, it's like, well, it's probably broken, so we're not going to
too many people back.
Yeah. you don't get the same crowd. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there is a genuinely good way to stress test.
There are only stressful ways to stress test it. That's just what we're going to be. That's just going to be our life.
Is it the game that will be stress tested, or is it us?
It'll be like Darkest Dungeon. We'll get that like, and then it'll say like minus 24 stress, and then we'll go insane.
You mean plus 24 stress?
Plus 24, yeah.
Because minus 24 stress would be pretty good.
I could use that.
Yeah, I think that's what happens
when you get a massage.
Yeah.
How come they're in Darkest Dungeon? They're already standing there in a train. How come they can't massage each other?
That would mean though that the person in the back would always be the most stressed. And the thing is,
why it's a tactical decision.
It's a tactical massage train. But the thing is, you don't want the person in the back to be the most stressed because you can't see them.
That's true.
What are they going to do back there?
Freak out. You're not even going to know about it.
They won't be getting massage. Well, you gotta have a rotating roster of.
Yeah. You flip them back there. Everybody gets massaged equally. It's a good situation.
Yeah. And of course, the person in the front, they're the one, they've got a tricky situation. Mm-hmm. Yes, they get the massages. They get all the massages. But they also get punched a lot in the front.
Yeah. They're also usually in Darkest Dungeon, they're standing in front of some just absolutely horrifying.
There's a demon. They're being stabbed in the belly. But also, they're getting a massage.
Maybe not so bad.
What if there was a game where
massage train?
There was like a hero that you didn't play as, but you had to develop sort of a spa and massage regimen to keep them in tip-top shape as they went through the dungeon.
Yeah, so it's kind of like those shopkeep games, but it's a spa for heroes coming back.
Hero spa.
Yeah.
Somebody make this.
I like it.
I want to play it. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server over at discord.gg/bscotch and come say hello. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop over at shop.bscotch.net. We got mugs, shirts, posters, and stickers of all varieties, shapes, sizes, colors, and flavors. I'm pretty sure they taste different.
They probably do if you lick them.
Yeah. Also, if you'd like to send us something, we do have a mailbox, which you can find the address for over at mailbox.bscotch.net. And last but not least, if you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee or otherwise donate to help support the podcast, you can head on over to moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.